Welcome to Health Tech Heroes, where we talk to innovators who are rewriting the DNA of healthcare. Today, we are joined by Dr. Jennifer Curtin, the Chief Medical Officer, and Ryan Kellogg, the Chief Executive Officer, who are also two of the three co-founders of Rhythm, a groundbreaking health tech company re-engineering care for complex chronic illnesses. Dr. Curtin, a seasoned physician with years of experience managing post-infectious illnesses, and Ryan Kellogg, an accomplished entrepreneur and PhD scientist with deep expertise in healthcare innovation, have united their diverse expertise to address a pressing gap in compassionate, data-driven healthcare. In this episode, we will explore their inspiring journey, learn about Rhythm's innovations, and hear their advice for future health tech leaders. Welcome to Health Tech Heroes, Jennifer and Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Jennifer, your patient-centered philosophy and deep focus on post-infectious illnesses led you to co-found Rhythm. Could you take us back to the moment or experience that sparked your passion for transforming patient care?
A little background on me that I think is helpful is I had ME/CFS, myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome, for about 9 years. And I'm thankfully have been in remission from it. I no longer meet the criteria since 2019. I do have several other conditions as well that I continue to deal with, but they're a lot more stable. So I went through this kind of health odyssey and ended up basically going into medicine to treat people with similar conditions to what I have and I've dealt with. And throughout the process of not just going through it as a patient myself, but also as a provider trying to help patients who have these conditions, I asked colleagues of mine after going through, years and years and thinking, I still don't have just an intuition for what treatment or treatments are going to work for the patient that's in front of me. And so I asked some of my colleagues who've been in this field for, 20, 30 years. And I said, have you guys developed an intuition for this? And they said, no, not in this area. So one thing is just as a practitioner, there's so many things you can try. It's interesting because there are no on-label treatments for myalgic encephalomyelitis, for long COVID, et cetera. But there are things you can try off-label. And there are actually quite a few things you can try. Sometimes the hard part is picking out which of those things to try for each person. It's sort of customized to the individual that's in front of you, what's going on with them. And so I was getting frustrated in the sense of just having to trial through so many different treatments before finding one or a combination that would have some benefit for a person. That's time, it's exhausting, it's really tough to put patients through that. They're getting their hopes up with each treatment and then it's like, oh, this one didn't work. And you'll see that the same treatment may dramatically help one person and may do absolutely nothing for someone else. And so I really wanted a way to better predict what was going to work for someone much sooner so we could remove some of that kind of like trial and error of trying these different things. And when the pandemic hit, pre-pandemic, there were already a lot of people who have these infection-associated chronic conditions. You don't really learn about a lot of them formally in your medical training. Only about 30% of medical schools even taught about ME/CFS formally. That number may be a bit different now, but you come out and you're kind of like, okay, like, what do I do? There aren't that many clinicians who treat these things or who are really particularly well-versed because most people aren't trained in them. And so you're really trying to figure out, okay, how can I figure this out faster? How can I make a clearer path so that more people can help manage these patients more effectively? And when that pandemic came out and people were getting COVID and now it's the most infectious agent that the world's ever seen. It's very contagious and it's just ripped through the world and continues to now just people get infected on a pretty regular basis at this point. What does that mean? How many people are going to develop these infection-associated chronic conditions after COVID? And I was very worried about that because I'm like, there's already a shortage of providers who manage these conditions pre-pandemic. Now, if we have this massive explosion of people developing these conditions, what's going to happen? Where are they going to go? And so that's when basically I met Ryan around after the lockdown had just lifted, and we share some experience in that from our personal health background. And we're kind of like, okay, we need to scale this kind of care to more people, anticipating that there's going to be a wave of what is now called long COVID. And that wave was very large. It hit a lot of people and it continues to. So I think really it was something I'd always kind of wanted to do to figure out how to reduce that trial and error component, But then the pandemic was really the impetus that was like, oh no, we really, really need this now. We're going to have a huge wave of people who need this. And
Uh,
that's when it started.
I want to double click on one timeline. You said you had ME and CFS for many years. And how long was that? And was it resolved before you went to medical school, or did you have to actually go to medical school and figure out the symptoms and figure out the solution for it?
I had it during my training. And so thankfully, I was considered mild, even though when you say mild for ME/CFS, even a mild case does not feel mild. And so I had that as well as several other conditions. And honestly, part of the reason I went into medicine, I had been interested in it before, but in different areas. And I really had to kind of figure out what was wrong with me. I had some really wonderful clinicians who helped me figure out that I had ME/CFS and certain other things before I got into my training. But really, during my training, I saw a lot of clinicians. I was being worked up as a patient in parallel to going through training. And we kind of found a lot of things, other things that were contributing and going on. I was able to get on certain treatments that really helped me notably. But it was a process of a lot of testing, a lot of treatment, a lot of trial, a lot of error throughout that entire process. So yes, I went through training with the condition active. It was not easy, but I made it. When you got strong enough motivation, and I did not understand pacing at that time. So I was just perpetually It was like, come home and just like pass out.
And that's normal for a lot of residents who do not even have the ME and CFS coming back home and passing out. Now you're suffering the chronic fatigue syndrome, and I can only imagine. I'm sorry to hear that, and I'm glad that it's under control. And Ryan, your journey bridges research and entrepreneurship and culminating in rhythms creation. Can you share the defining moments or realizations that encouraged you to merge academia and health tech innovation?
I started as an engineer. I did like electrical engineering, and similar to Jen, I had my own health stuff going on for about a decade. And throughout the decade, I never really had a clinician who had any explanation or provided much help. And so I was kind of on my own, on my own. And as I was experiencing these symptoms, it kind of shifted me gradually from electrical engineering more into biology. And I ended up doing a PhD in systems biology, and then worked at Stanford and in Mike Snyder's lab. One characteristic of these illnesses is that you experience flares or crashes. And this isn't like a totally unique thing to ME/CFS and long COVID. Autoimmune conditions broadly have a similar pattern, but my thinking was maybe we can better understand kind of the underlying mechanisms of these illnesses if we can understand what's happening when someone goes through one of these crashes. And so I developed some technology for doing multi-omic analysis on these microsamples that people can collect at home frequently throughout the day. So that research is still ongoing. It's a project at Stanford where they're looking at not only long COVID, but also ME/CFS and chronic Lyme. And so Jen and I met kind of around that period of time. And, I was interested in how can we take, this very rich data we can get in a clinical setting and, apply it to patients, actually help patients. And so that's how we started the company.
This is like as a market researcher for SLE, and a lot of symptoms are very similar, and differentiating those conditions, which are autoimmune versus what you have here, becomes really difficult. And I see the difficulty in doing so. So both of you did have a lived experience when it comes down to this. Ryan, specifically, was there a point, a frustration, a pain point that you identified that you think it needed to be fixed? There was an incident or something in your life that actually happened to you, and you said like, okay, this cannot continue. I need to change this.
For Jen and I, the experience that we have is kind of universal across patients in that like you feel like you're crazy because like you have symptoms that are unexplained that most doctors can't explain, and they tend to just kind of dismiss you. It's like your lab tests are normal. Must be in your head. You must be stressed out. Those kinds of things. It's kind of coming from that place. It's frightening in one sense. So that's what I wanted to eliminate, to like actually understand what's happening in this huge population of patients with this set of conditions that we really don't fully understand.
Just to get to the point where you want to get tested for a specific condition, that itself takes a long time, and I hope there is a solution for that you make this journey much shorter. That kind of brings us to Rhythm's vision for transforming chronic illness care. What makes your approach unique and particularly impactful. I would love to hear this from both of you.
We have people with lived experience on the team. We have additional co-founders and they've got lived experience as well. And so we really all came from having gone through this process ourselves. And it was like, all right, we've got folks on the research side. We've got people on our team who are on the medical side. We've got people on our team who are on the business. And we're kind of trying to bring the patient experience through the lens of our like perspective as patients, but also as like professionals in the fields that we're in, to try and say, okay, how can we solve this problem and how can we do it in a way that's scalable and that reaches a lot of people and also ultimately ends up becoming affordable. And really this care, since it's so specific and has to be so individualized, it's very hard to create like rote routine processes that you can just apply to a bunch of people. And so it's like, how can you do that? And I think what we've really tried to do is we've started out in Y Combinator, they tell you things, they say, do what doesn't scale. And really what that means is kind of go in and really be in there with the population you're trying to help. Like get your hands dirty, really learn the issue, be inside in all angles of it and learn from the information, the data, working with people, what their pain points are, all of that, so that you can really understand the problem before you try to craft your solution. And so that is what we've really been doing. And now we're kind of to the point where we've got two products that are sort of the solution that we are trying to scale. So Rhythm right now has the clinic. That's the part that like doesn't scale right now. And then it's expensive as well. It's not affordable for the mass majority of people. And it's because it just takes a lot of time to do this kind of care. So really where we're going from that is Rhythm Direct, which is sort of like, if you're familiar with like HIMSS or Row, sort of like an asynchronous platform where you fill out a questionnaire, clinician reviews it on the other side, determines if the medication's appropriate, and then if it is, prescribes it for you remotely. So we have that for a limited selection of medications that are useful in this set of conditions. So that was like the first kind of scalable, lower cost option that we put out there, but it is a bit limited in which conditions and medications you could choose. So now the thing we have in beta is Rhythm Intelligence, which is an AI platform that is HIPAA compliant, and it allows you to sync up and merge your records, take notes, and basically have conversations with an AI that's secure, that's informed by your history, as well as the latest research on the particular conditions that we focus on, so that you can start getting together suggestions, thoughts, plans around what should I do next? If you're working with your primary care doctor and your primary care doctor wasn't trained in these conditions, can you take information from this and share it with your primary care doc to inform your next conversation with them about, hey, here's some research, here's some things we might consider trying, here's kind of some information on how they're usually dosed in these conditions. And the thing we're doing too is we're incorporating like outcomes for that people have contributed from surveys, from research papers, from things that we've experienced in clinical practice to inform, oh, here's what the research says. But in this area, again, there's nothing that's super on label. So you've got some studies for many of these conditions. You don't have massive, huge gold standard randomized control trials that you can just say, okay, here's what you do, here's where you go. There's a lot of grade 4, grade 5 level evidence. And so you're really trying to combine that. And then can we put the real world data in with it and use that to augment the studies that exist and the expert opinion that's out there? Can we really take that and say, hey, here's what people are responding to, and here's the factors that help predict who's going to respond to what? Can we pick those patterns out? So that's really what we're building right now. And that's what we're trying to scale to people. And the thing we're doing is like, so with Rhythm Intelligence, we want to have a free tier for that forever, because the truth of it is, like, the sicker you are with these conditions, your net worth, your income, like, you can't work anymore. 25% of people are like home or bedbound with these conditions sometimes. So it's like, we need to make this have an option that people can access no matter what. And so that's what we have in beta testing right now. We're reviewing it with people who are affected by these conditions, getting their feedback, and really trying to tailor it and make it better so that it can fill that gap where there's not enough practitioners who can do this. There's a gap between, we don't really know exactly what's going to work for who, even though there are options to try. Can we bridge those gaps, make this accessible to people at a price they can afford, at using technology that scales? So that's kind of where we are right now. It's this whole process of like starting slowly, do what doesn't scale, moving it into models that scale, and then fusing those together into what is going to be the future of care for these conditions.
I would say area of medicine where there's the biggest opportunity for an AI solution. And it's really essential to, get the care to like the massive number of people that have these conditions. Like across medicine, there's a clinician shortage. But in this area, that shortage is ultra acute. Like across the whole country, there's dozens or low hundreds of folks with expertise in this area. And there's 20 million plus patients impacted. And so we're trying to bring together the data and make that happen.
And just based on your comment and Jennifer's comment, I have like 3 more questions on that, if you are okay with double clicking. The first question is, you have Rhythm Direct and then you have the Rhythm AI. Are we moving away from clinic model to the direct and then to the AI? Are we going to maintain all these 3 pillars is first question. The second one is, you said Rhythm Clinic is expensive because you have to maintain a center and not scalable. Since direct is a little bit more scalable, and definitely the AI part is going to be pretty scalable as it seems. But where are you going to get the patients from, especially for the last part of it? And from a patient perspective, how do I get your services?
We've got an interesting mix of like where people are coming from right now. So various things through social media, organic search, word of mouth has been an interesting source. We're also kind of like in conversations with various different advocacy organizations within this group of illnesses, so that to kind of get the word out there. We've also been in contact with different practitioners who are in the space or who are new to the space and wanting to learn more. And, we've interestingly gotten some interest from them saying, hey, if you had a system that could help me manage these patients better, I would absolutely love that. So we're kind of doing twofold. We're actually building out a clinician portal for it. So how can a clinician see this information and we started by building the patient side. So patients could just come in and say, hey, you know what, I'm just going to plug this in, bring it to my practitioner. But our goal is to have the clinicians and the patients be able to access the system so that they can actually kind of almost like collaborate. Because this kind of care really is a journey together. It's collaboration. It's not like one person is just going to say, do this, do that, do this, and you follow it. There's discussions involved because everything's off-label, et cetera. Right now, if you go to rhythm.com, you can access the application for the clinic. And then also there's access to Rhythm Direct, which is that more asynchronous prescribing platform. Also, we have the beta for Rhythm Intelligence right now is through invitation, or if you're a Rhythm Direct customer, or you can like access it through there. We did actually merge that with the platform. You're not automatically, it's like available if you want to activate it. So realistically, our hope is to kind of get it really finalized and tuned in and really build on the feedback from actual patients and users, people with lived experience. Once we kind of get it to the point where we want it for launch, we're going to do a push in terms of social media, webinars, letter mails, et cetera, to try and get the word out as much as we can and get folks access to this. But it's not like overtly open to the public right now for the AI side. It's getting there.
Eventually, as a plan-wise, when you are getting this word out to the people, are you getting a word out to a certain type of specialty physicians, or are you getting out to the just about anybody in the advocacy groups? Who are your target population? And how do you get paid? I'm just curious because you said you want to provide it for free for a lot of patients, but I'm sure there is a monetizing plan somewhere behind the scenes. And what is the plan there?
We're still trying to figure out the monetization, to be honest. We're obviously looking at how people are using it. We're also looking at, the AI, like the query costs actually are quite expensive. So we're looking at trying to optimize those. So that's really what drives a lot of how we price it is how much is it costing us to actually, host it, run it. So realistically, what we want to have is a free tier that has a certain number. Likely it'll be like there will be a certain number of queries that you can do using the AI. And before then, to go above that number of queries, like let's say per month or something, then you would have to pay a certain amount to get additional queries. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it right now. That might change, but that's sort of where we're leaning. And then the other thing we hope to do through it as well is kind of Rhythm Direct will be an option. So let's say if there's certain treatments you want to try and your primary care is like, hey, I'm not really sure how to dose this medication for POTS or for ME/CFS. It's like, oh, well, here's an option, Rhythm Direct. Let's see. Okay, is it in your state? Perfect. You could go through this if you wish. And then also adding additional services to that as well. So sometimes the laboratory testing that we run in the clinic is kind of unusual. Like these aren't your standard run-of-the-mill labs. We do run those too, but there's a lot of them that are very unique. So having those be able to be ordered by patients, because now there's the ability to do patient direct cash pay labs at a lot of laboratory facilities now. So we're looking into options for that. But yeah, that's the monetization would also potentially come through those additional add-on services as well.
To bring down the costs, like the care model does have to evolve. So we do imagine like ultimately simplifying our product offering. So it's kind of just one product where you can get started for free. You can get all of your data in one place. You can use the AI to, connect the dots in your data and get a sense for treatments you should try and what testing you should get to kind of advance and overall your next steps. And then we make it very easy to actually take action on those testing and treatment steps. And the idea is that, the clinic is integrated into that. So if you need more human time, provider expertise in your case, if you have a complex case, most patients have a complex case, but there is, a wide range of needs in terms of how involved a clinician needs to be. So some patients are kind of naturally more self-directed, but making it easy to start at lower costs. And then as your needs for more clinician involvement increase, you can access that as well.
This is a fascinating model. I did not connect that line until you told me that, hey, you know what, this is a free tier, but that is just knowledge base. That's letting you know that, hey, this could be the condition, but if you need help beyond this, you have the option of going back to your own physician or coming to us through the direct or the clinic. So you both came from a lived experience, and this is a question for both of you. And what was that non-negotiable pain point that you wanted to solve with Rhythm when you came and took up this job? What was the primary pain point that you wanted to address? And it was like, this is why I am here. And Jennifer, you probably have one, and Ryan, you probably have a different one. I'd love to hear what was that non-negotiable pain point that you wanted to address through Rhythm.
Mine was the predicting which treatments can work for a person. That as a clinician just grinds your gears because you're always just like, okay, we've tried a list of things as long as my arm. We've tried a bunch of different things. And then this person is maybe 50% better, 70% better. In some cases, only like 25, 30% better. Okay, what is it? Did I just not try the right thing? Is there something that's out there that could get this person from like, let's say 25% or from bedbound to like at least like moderate or mild ME/CFS or long COVID? And you're always wondering, is there just that thing I just didn't try for them? And that always haunts you. And so that's something as a clinician I really, really want is how can we start to predict better what's going to work for this person who has come to me, who's sitting in front of me right now and needs my help?
And that's a big challenge because you really do not have any guidelines. And you are also working in a gray area where you don't know whether this will be covered or not at all. And you have to make it a model where patients can actually afford it out of pocket.
For me as a patient, like fundamentally, I just wanted to understand what was going on. And so I wanted to create some system that allows access and greater understanding through whatever means of collecting data make that possible. So through molecular information, through wearables data, and ultimately using that to shortcut the path to healing. But I think fundamentally for me, that was like the biggest pain point, which is kind of the mystery of the situation.
And Ryan, just a follow-up question on this. You did mention multi-omics, and that could mean proteomics and genomics and even other omics, I guess. What was that breakthrough that brought you closest to identifying this is the technology, the test we have to run for the patients? And how did you arrive at that answer?
That's still ongoing work. That Stanford project is collecting a huge amount of data. Like each 10 microliter sample generates 100,000 data points, something in that ballpark. And so I think there will continue to be research that emerges around biomarkers that shed additional light on these illnesses. But the main underlying point is that this illness is hugely heterogeneous, very, different presentations between individuals. And so really the question is, how do you understand that? How do you most efficiently understand an individual's unique illness? Yeah. And so like we did have our own lab for a while, and I know we'll later get into like lessons, but one lesson is like, don't try to do too many things as an entrepreneur. And so we've come to rely more on existing commercially available testing, and we do a tremendous amount of testing on our clinic patients, and we are crunching through that data to understand like how testing, which biomarkers inform which treatments the patient is likely to respond to.
So both of you are working on something that is multiple variables, multiple type of treatments, and to even arrive at those multiple type of treatments, you need multiple types of things, and both are pretty uncertain.
A little bit of a two-stage problem. Like, well, one is figuring out what testing testing you need. And then two is based on which results, which treatments are most likely to help.
The reality in clinical care is that oftentimes you're doing both in parallel. So you've got some of the labs and testing has come back. You've got the clinical history, you've got the vital signs, and you're like, okay, we think we have this testing and it seems like this is what's going on, but there's still a certain amount of uncertainty and there's still other things we need to look at. But that workup can take forever and you kind of need to do stuff for people right now because they're suffering. So it's like, okay, you're going to start treating, but you have to continue the workup throughout the process too.
Okay, so we are talking about months of workup, and sometimes the treatment, if it has some indication there, then that informs the testing as well. So one question, one general at a higher level question is, for a chronic condition, patients do change insurance, they change doctors, they change their primary care. So basically the platform follows the patient, not the care system, right? So it is every account that you have is connected to the patient, not the clinic or not to the insurance, right? That's what I figure. So that it moves with the patient. They can go to another doctor or a completely another system, even to another country, but you still have the care information with them, right?
Right now, like we're building it so that the account is for the patient. And then eventually what we plan to do as well, just because this also is a way of scaling to more people, is if you can get a platform into the provider's hands, that provider can then use it across all their patients, especially if it helps identify which of their patients might have this that they otherwise may not have otherwise recognized. Because sometimes these conditions can look very similar to other ones, or they can have if your main symptom is like fatigue is a very general symptom, and there's so many types of fatigue, but we just call them all the same thing, which isn't super helpful. So someone may say, oh, well, there's a billion reasons you could be fatigued. And it's like, okay, but did this show up where they weren't complaining about fatigue before their COVID infection and now they are? It's like, hey, should you consider long COVID in this? Bringing that up to them and then saying, okay, now how do you go about the workup for that? How do you go about digging into this and giving them kind of like the next steps? And then also, okay, if this does seem to be the case, then what treatments can you look at and what's the evidence behind them? And then what's just the real world data that's behind them as well? So that's the hope there, is to have an account that follows the patient. So yes, anywhere they go, they can always access it. And so that way, yes, if they switch, that data isn't lost to them. But also having a provider side and getting it into as many health systems as possible. So that way, wherever that patient goes, they've got an easier way of knowing their provider can actually see that data in the way that displays it in the most intuitive way for these conditions to them wherever they go. That would be
the reason why I'm asking is this is a big pain point for the patients, right? It is like a huge pain point for the patients, and sometimes the chronic illnesses fall through the crack and the next provider has no idea what this patient has gone through, what are the workup, and just making it above platform, especially for such a unknown chronic or understudied chronic condition. And the ME/CFS and long COVID have been essential to Rhythm's initial work. Where do you see healthcare and health tech evolving in managing these conditions? What breakthrough do you anticipate? Right now, I believe you are in the AI, and what next? What are we thinking about?
I think if we can develop the AI system, get it into the hands of people with these conditions as well as their providers, that's just going to be huge in the sense of just kind of scaling the knowledge. Other things, these conditions right now are diagnosed for the most part clinically. So if there's an identifiable biomarker that ends up becoming developed, there's a couple candidates out there that look very, very promising, but still more work needs to be done. But to be able to like formally diagnose these conditions using just like a blood test, so that it's like, okay, you either have this or you don't have this. That would be very helpful, because not just because it makes the patient's journey easier, the clinician's job easier, but because it also enables people to do clinical trials a bit better in the sense of knowing who they're going to select for a trial. Because when you have heterogeneous conditions, you always wonder, okay, are we selecting the right group of folks who are going to respond to this treatment? And so unfortunately, I think a lot of folks in the know here are worried that the clinical trials, if we do kind of these, non-adaptive one drug trials, and we don't have like large numbers of people in those trials, which that makes the trial very expensive. We're never going to see like a successful trial. We're going to just see a subset of people that respond. And that's all we'll ever see, because of the heterogeneity. And I think that to some degree is also a reason why not like more pharma companies haven't really done as many trials for these conditions, even though there's a lot of people with the conditions, is that there's some hesitancy over, are we going to put the money in to do this very expensive trial when we don't even really know exactly who to pick for it? Like, are we able to really pick who's most likely to respond? And so I think biomarker development, super critical. I think another thing too is just the components of AI with the protein modeling and drug discovery work. There may be drugs that are out there that already exist that may be able to be repurposed for these conditions. That would be wonderful. So repurposing, but also the development of novel drugs and possibly seeing that pipeline accelerate perhaps. Obviously, we'll still have everything has to go through the clinical trials, but we may see that entire process in silico all the way through to human trials. Perhaps that changes significantly over time and is able to be more streamlined, faster, more targeted. Maybe the trials can be cheaper. So that way we see more come through the pipeline and more new, exciting, more targeted drugs that don't have as many off-target effects. That would be really wonderful to see.
So effectively, you are actually defining disease state and multiple in stuff and heterogeneous fatigue syndrome, you are going to get defined diseases essentially. And hopefully you're working with some guidelines organization to do this, because this is pretty fascinating from my perspective, right? It's like you are actually developing guidelines as you are doing this work. And the next question is, there are a lot of entrepreneurs who are coming up, and AI is a catchy word, and who are coming into diseases which are really complex in healthcare, where solutions are super complex. What would be your advice for entrepreneurs who are coming into a field where they're trying to solve such a complex problem? What is your advice? What are those characteristics or the mindset they need to bring so that they can solve something like this? What would be your advice for them?
I think like keeping an open mind, like you kind of sometimes you hear about these stories of people who were completely naive to the field, like they'd never worked in it before. They come in with a totally outside perspective, maybe from a different background, and they come in and they go, "Why is this done this way?" And they just that doesn't seem like it makes sense. Like, why are people still using fax machines for records? Things like that. But the thing is, in particularly in healthcare, there are a lot of processes that if you design for clinicians or you design for patients, but you do so without really involving them in the process, you may end up finding that you're going to create a solution that may be extremely elegant in its standalone process, but it doesn't fit well into the system that that clinician has to work in a day-to-day basis. So it ends up making their work harder because it doesn't fit into their existing flow. So really making sure that you've got the actual stakeholders involved. You've got like people, you're really learning what they do on a day-to-day basis, seeing what their workflow is, because in clinics, in hospitals and outpatient centers, it's very hard to just rapidly change workflows. There's a lot of things you have to go through. You have to train multiple members of a team. You have to make sure the system can handle it. There's a lot of logistics behind a lot of things in healthcare. So even though there's some things that seem very outdated or why is this done this way, I think watching out for the trap within healthcare of sometimes you run up against, there's like, this is done this way, and you can't just rip it out and start over immediately. Understanding the inertia in the system is important so that you don't build something that's beautiful and works amazingly, but is so far ahead that they can't kind of retrofit it.
It's like sometimes what I've heard is just having the physicians log into another system is a no-go. And Ryan, for you, from your perspective, is there a non-negotiable entrepreneurial spirit that we want to bring into workplace?
Like a lesson that I've had to learn over and over again is like focus and not trying to, boil the ocean with. Like it's easy to be, like a lot of things in healthcare are broken and need to be fixed. Companies can be successful picking off a very small piece and going after a very specific thing. It also can be successful taking a much more kind of very, hey, we're going to totally change everything approach. And to some extent, it depends on your ability as a storyteller, how much money you can raise. That dictates a little bit how ambitious you can be. But certainly you're more likely to have some degree of success, focusing on, this is something well understood, a relatively modest in scale as a start that expands.
Your advice is focus on something you're really passionate about?
That's sort of what we've done with our company. The technologies that we're developing will apply broadly across a whole range of chronic illnesses. And there's just so much complexity in healthcare. You kind of have to start with one thing.
Yeah, 100%. And like as you were discussing, both of you, about the heterogeneity of the disease, sure, as we are doing all these genomic tests and everything, we might start identifying some of the markers for rare diseases that we didn't know before. And that itself is such a big market, like rare diseases. We may or may not pursue that, but having this framework of seems broad, but having a defined framework, but working out, and perhaps you will start focusing on a certain condition. And basically the mindset is focus on what you're passionate about, or focus what you're good at, and go for it, and you will see success. And so if I were a leader in your space and I'm talking to people who are going to work with me, what should be my characteristic to tell people that we are going to work in a very uncertain area where there is no certainty, and people are not taking up, even pharma companies are not taking it up, because there is a lot of uncertainty in this area. For leaders like this, you probably need to have a very unique mindset. Not only direct people to keep their focus, but you also inspire people. Ryan or Jennifer, what is that leadership quality that is very unique to a space that is so uncertain and that you have to bring in?
Perseverance, persistence. So this is a problem that we, care, personally and deeply about. We're willing to kind of navigate the, uncertain future as we try to, find, solutions that work in this space. I mean, that doesn't only apply to healthcare, entrepreneurship broadly.
It does.
It's often a game of the last person standing that wins.
You're saying perseverance, so you live by example on the perseverance, right? That's really good. How do you inspire people? Like, do you go back and talk about the patients and the wins that you have had? What is that you keep in mind? What is your language that is different from? It's probably not like, hey, we are going to make $1 million in next week. That is probably not the language. Some companies, that's the inspiration. But what is that inspiration for you?
I think the inspiration for us is helping people. Impact can we make on human beings who are suffering? And when we, in the practice, we're interacting with people who are suffering every single day, and you see them, you hear their stories, you feel their pain, right? And that can be pretty heavy. And it's like, what we want to do everything we can to try and like alleviate that for as many people as possible. And we do share the wins. We congratulate each other if there's something that comes up and like, hey, this person like did amazingly. This person like had a really great experience here and blah, blah, blah. We like encourage and shout that out to our team and make sure that celebrate your wins, keep inching forward, and keep your eye on what really matters here is like that let's reduce human suffering, and let's do so as quickly and as efficiently as we possibly can. And I think you kind of also have to pick a team that can be motivated by that. So not everyone, some folks are extraordinarily motivated by like money or fame or something like that. And in this area, that's not going to be as useful. You got to get people who are motivated by helping others and the overall mission of just changing medicine and changing how medicine is done. Like I imagine a future far out where basically you kind of have wearables, sensors, things, there's even like ambient sensors, and it's just picking up on, hey, there's this little bit of change going on, and you do just a very small amount of blood or even interstitial fluid through maybe like a small sensor that's attached to the skin, or even eventually implanted potentially. We've all seen plenty of sci-fi shows with that. And it starts to pick up in real time and incorporate all the variables, the environment, all of the things about your vitals, your sleep, what you've been exposed to, your genetics, your epigenetics, all of the things going on, and starts to really give us a better readout of human health in the sense that perhaps one day it may not even be that there's per se a diagnosis. It's just, here's what's going on with you. Here's what it's explained by. Here's how you remedy it. So it just goes straight from the problem into the solution. And this idea of having like a diagnostic label may become redundant or not as necessary in the future. We just look at it as, okay, all of the components, what's going on? And it may be slightly different in each person. Because I mean, even today, if you look at something like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, there's multiple different types or subsets that we're still sort of delineating even within those conditions. So the labels kind of only give you a certain view. Can we get way more granular, way more specific, get down to a hyper-personalized, individualized level and incorporate and start to reduce the amount of variables that we don't know? and how they impact things. Map that out. I'm so excited for that future. And I hope that we can build towards that here and really contribute to that in some way.
That's awesome. And the key is to hire people who also share this type of enthusiasm to build this future for the patients, and just hire the right people, and then your messaging is in place. And it makes, as a leader, it makes your life much more easier to inspire people because they see your vision. And Ryan, do you have any take on it? As a leader, how do you inspire your team when there are so many moving parts, and what is the key to you?
Like Jen said, I mean, we're helping people every day. We have stories all the time of people who have, really benefited from working with us. And so that's motivating on a day-to-day basis. But I think we can also remind ourselves that there is a huge opportunity here. It's like a huge number of people that, are in need of a solution, and being able to provide that solution at scale is, that will be a big business. Having a team that's passionate about this area is critical.
And one thing I noticed too, Ryan, like we're on like the calls and we're going into the nitty gritty of like the AI system and how to make it better for the people who are using it and all of this, there's a certain amount of just like kind of like wonder and awe that comes up, and it's like you can see it in your face. It's like not even conscious. You just get so like excited and lit up. And Ryan's not the most expressive guy, so when you see that, you're going, he's really feeling it. And I think all of us pick up on that. It's kind of like we know when Ryan's off and he's like thinking about that future, and he's like imagining it, and he's kind of almost like looking off into it while he's talking. And it's just like that's like this cool little level of inspiration that comes from just like genuinely being passionate about what you're doing and really like believing in what you're going for. It comes through in like little unconscious and subconscious ways too.
It's like, I can sleep peacefully. I made Ryan smile a day. That's my
I think it's
achievement.
about thinking about the future, but also part of like why I think Jen is so good at what she does. She wants to solve mysteries, right? And it's is also pretty fundamental. It's just like the desire to understand biology and be able to put together more of these pieces to understand.
Puzzle pieces together, and this is coming from multi-dimensional puzzle pieces. It's not just one dimension that we are trying to solve. It's not just a business issue. It is a scientific issue, and it is even within the scientific, there are layers to this. And before we wrap up, each one of you have 90 seconds. If you want to talk about something that I actually missed in my questions, or if you want to talk about something or reiterate something that you think is really important, the question is yours, the answer is yours, and the stage is yours. Either of you can go first.
There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of negativity around AI and things, and the environmental impact is significant. I think my thought is one area where this can make a huge impact in a positive way is healthcare. If it's done right, it's done with this nothing about us without us, like involve the people that you're building this for, get their input. That's what we're doing. Obviously, we're affected ourselves, but I think healthcare, there's so much you could do in terms of improving the quality of life for people, improving potentially health span, identifying diseases earlier. I do think that healthcare is one of the very much justifiable uses for AI. And the other thing too is there are some pretty exciting things that look like possibly it may reduce the amount of like energy and water and cooling that it consumes, and as those technologies get better, I'm hoping that the environmental impact will lessen. But I do think there's a lot of cost, not just in terms of financial costs, but also physical costs. And if you think about things, if you have to go drive a city away to go see a specialist for an appointment, you think about the amount of gasoline, you think about the amount of time, you think about maybe you had to get a babysitter to watch your kids so you could go to this appointment. So that person drove to your place, and like all of the factors that are involved there's a lot of cost and environmental impact from healthcare in general already as it is. And so if AI can do that, but at the same time it can do it maybe faster and can get people to the right clinicians, the right places much sooner, it may end up actually saving on not just the burden of human suffering, but the financial costs and the cost to the environment overall. So that's one area of just because I know there's a lot of questions around AI and rightfully.
I would just invite patients to not be afraid to let us know what's on their mind about things that would be helpful to them. We certainly acknowledge that like the care right now is not super accessible from a price standpoint. We're like doing everything we can to like bring down those costs. But I guess don't let that be a barrier to necessarily engaging with us. Feel free to like reach out if you try Rhythm Intelligence or Rhythm Direct, like let us know, feedback and how we can improve.
Thank you very much, and I truly appreciate you both here today, and especially because you are addressing an issue at every level, including the cost effectiveness, and saying that you're trying to give a free tier in healthcare that is very rare. So I truly appreciate that.